Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you this morning and to continue our Vision and Gift series. If you haven't met me, as Hannah said, my name is Eve. And if you're visiting us today or you're finding out a bit more about St. George's, then we're talking at the moment about what we feel God has called us to do and be as a church. And as Hannah mentioned, in 2026, we feel like God has asked us to really focus on being wholehearted disciples, followers of Jesus, as we live out the vision that God has given us to preach Jesus, make disciples, serve the city, and send out leaders. Last week, Lizzie, our team rector, spoke on 1 Samuel 12, and how the leader of the ancient Israelites, Samuel, encouraged God's people to serve the Lord with their whole hearts. So if you haven't heard that yet, or you'd appreciate hearing it again, then do listen online to our podcast or YouTube. And then next week we'll have an opportunity to commit ourselves to playing our part by praying, serving, and giving. But let's first together look at our passage that we had read to us from the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew 13. These passages are all about being wholehearted. But to understand them, we need to understand the context, the invitation of the kingdom of God that is described in these passages by Jesus. It's Jesus who is speaking in these verses. The kingdom of God is the main theme of the teaching of Jesus. But rather than purely a political kingdom that we might imagine today, or a harsh regime, the kingdom of God, the creator, good God of the world, is the rule, the reign, and the realm of that God, who is just, he is merciful, he is compassionate, he is good and powerful. It means Jesus as Lord forever. It's not purely the personal salvation of individuals, although that happens, or purely social justice or good works in society. It is both and together. And the kingdom of God was introduced in the person of Jesus, in flesh, and so is present now, and will be complete in full when Jesus returns again. It's a future hope, but we now live in this now and not yet of God's kingdom. A helpful way of describing what the kingdom is like, I found from Bible Project, which is a helpful resource online. In the community of the servant king, Jesus, you gain honor by serving others. Instead of revenge, you forgive and do good to your enemies. You gain true wealth by giving it away. To follow the servant Messiah, you must become a servant yourself. Our vision at St. George's draws on key aspects of life in God's kingdom. And Jesus uses parables to teach about the kingdom of God, these short, fictitious, but very relatable stories for his hearers. They use all sorts of language and context that would have been familiar to them. There's quite a lot of agricultural language, for example. Some parables describe the surprising nature of God's kingdom. Some are about the upside-down value system of God's kingdom. Some are parables of decision. They invite a response. How will we respond to the kingdom of God? And in our passages in Matthew 13, 44 to 46, Jesus is demonstrating the immense worth of the kingdom of God when found or discovered. So in the first one, in verse 44, there is treasure hidden in a field, and it is discovered by accident by a man who, in his joy, then sells everything else he had and buys the field. What was discovered was understood as so valuable to that man in the long run that he let go of everything else to obtain it forever. And it reminded me a little bit of a kind of cash in the attic situation in the terms of discovery. You find something you weren't expecting to find, and it is of immense value. And then in the next verse, the kingdom of God of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. So a merchant is looking carefully for something he knows are already valuable. Pearls. He's an expert. And when the merchant finds this particular pearl, he recognizes in it immense value, more than others. And his response is the same as the man who found the treasure. He sold everything to obtain it. And that's a bit like, looking for something like a metal detector in the lovely show, The Detectorists. And they're looking for something, and then they find it, and they know that it's valuable. So this tells us about the kingdom of God, that it's immensely valuable. It's like treasure. It's worth giving up everything else to obtain. But also that it doesn't matter for us whether people discover the kingdom of God, kind of discover Jesus in one particular way, or whether they are looking diligently for it. It might be the difference between a person being on a very intentional journey of looking for God, or having some kind of experience or encounter where they discover Jesus. Both are valuable. But we, in our response to this treasure, can be wholehearted. We can respond in our joy. We can give all of ourselves to the kingdom of God, which is the equivalent in the parables of selling everything they had to obtain the kingdom of God. Now, in these parables, treasure and pearls imply wealth. But other parables do make it clear that the kingdom of God is not a guarantee of financial wealth or being saved from difficult times. We don't have to pay money or earn the kingdom of God. Jesus makes that possible as a gift to us. So let's not confuse that value with money. And these parables ask that response then of the hearers that Jesus was speaking to and of us today. Are we going to be wholehearted in our response to the kingdom of God, to Jesus? The characters in the parables counted the cost and they went for it anyway, wholeheartedly committing to the valuable thing they had found. They were all in. Are we wholehearted as we pursue the kingdom of God, as we follow Jesus? So to look to our vision, we want to live wholeheartedly seeking God's kingdom at St. George's. And so I'm going to look at the second two parts of our vision, serve the city and send out leaders, to see how this works itself out in the life of our church. To serve the city is to be involved in God's kingdom coming in Leeds. And we do this in a variety of ways as a church. Each of us has the opportunity to serve the city in our daily context, in our family, in our neighborhood, where we live, in our workplace, maybe volunteering or offering time to an organization in the city. I know there are many hours represented here for that is the case. And you might want to share in your small groups how are we all involved in serving the city, and to really encourage one another where we see that happening. Last week we heard about Holy Trinity Boar Lane, next to the Trinity Centre, a centre for faith and work, which helps people connect their faith with the reality of their working lives. And it brings an invitation to explore Jesus into people's workplace. And we're serving the city through that ministry, including the Leeds chaplaincy that was launched that enables anyone working in Leeds to meet with a chaplain. Another way we serve the city is through our interfaith dialogue work, building relationships of trust and respect between people of different faiths, particularly through shared meals. And a highlight of 2025 were the interfaith meals between students of different faiths. One St. George's student said, "Thank you so much for organizing the meal. I really enjoyed it. It was a lovely evening of making new friends, learning more about their faith, their lives, and also being challenged by their questions about my own faith." Really encouraging. One key way we, as a whole church, serve the city together is through supporting our local mission partners with prayer and financial giving. And some congregation members also volunteer in their activities and as trustees. And if you are giving financially to St. George's, you are also supporting these partners in our giving away each year as a church. Our local mission partners are Lighthouse, who serve the vulnerable and marginalized in Leeds in various locations in the city, including some space here at St. George's. Kids Club, who reach the most vulnerable, unreached children and their families and communities in Leeds. Leeds Faith in Schools, who bring the Christian faith into high schools in Leeds. Fusion, who support student mission and ministry in the local church. And St. George's Crypt, the homeless shelter beneath our feet, who support the homeless and vulnerable of Leeds. This is our historic mission partner as a church. This is often what people most associate us with. If I say I'm at St. George's and I'm in a different part of the country, people will often say, "Oh, St. George's Crypt." And we were pleased to celebrate with them their 95th birthday last year with Archbishop Stephen Cottrell. And in 2025, they baptized 13 people, and we celebrate that with them. And as one example from our mission partners, we're going to watch a short testimony of a member who has been through the Growing Rooms residential recovery program at the Crypt. And so we're going to watch their testimony now.
So I started being an everyday user of Class A drugs when I was 15, which was cocaine. Then by the time, and when I was using cocaine, my life was still progressing in a good way. I owned companies, houses, etc. But as soon as I made that transfer from cocaine to crack and heroin, my life just crashed and I sold everything that I had. I think I sold a business for a lot of money. Sold every house I owned. At one point I had 5 houses. But through my addiction, not only did I become an absent father and an irrelevant son to my parents, I sold everything that I owned and ended up with nothing. And smoked a lot. Yeah. I hit multiple rock bottoms, so I hit my first rock bottom 5 years before I knew anything about recovery. I tried some private treatment centres. I've done the Priory, I've done UCAT, I've done 28-day detoxes, etc. I tried another sort of council or charity run treatment centre before around this time last year. But what that didn't, and I hit my rock bottom, I suppose, when I left there, in the sense I had a bit of abstinence but no change in my behaviour. So I didn't have any tools to use to deal with the spiritual malady that I had. So as soon as I left, I used, because I didn't know how to manage life. And I hit a massive rock bottom then, because I came out with a bit of knowledge that there was the ability, and I wouldn't die if I didn't take drugs, but I just went properly in to hide from the shame and guilt that I felt for breaking the hope that I built up in people that loved me lives. So there's another chap that was in Growing Rooms called Tom, who I met before, and I used to text him in the morning asking for money, because when I was out in addiction, spending everything I had to text in the morning, and his response to me would be, "I can't do that, but here's a number to call." So eventually I phoned, and I think for me making the first call, it was a matter of days until I turned up here. I'll be 6 months at the end of the week. It's the first time I've ever had that length of time clean. I'm about to move into one of those move-on flats that they've got here, so living on my own rather than with the security of my peers in the same house as me. So that's a bit nerve-wracking, a new thing for me, and something I've not had to do, kind of be responsible a bit more to myself, less peers to be accountable to, and but it's the next step on my journey. I want to continue developing a relationship with my son, try and heal some of the harms I've got, try and maintain the peace of mind my parents feel while I'm in here, try and show them that they can do that, that they can keep that peace of mind when I finish. I try and give back, I suppose, because without this, it wasn't just me that's suffering, it's everybody else. Mum, dad, brothers, sisters, son, ex-partners, friends, anyone that cares about me also is a prisoner to my addiction, because they are left with worry, fear, all the emotions that I feel, but they have no control over it. It's based on what I do. I've spoken to my family, and when I'm out there, they're waiting for a call from the police or from the hospital, all that one to say that, it's been too much, I've gone too far. So I want to do whatever it takes to maintain the fact that they're not going to be waiting for that anymore. Just accept that you need help and do what's suggested. In the fellowship here, we say we give suggestions rather than telling someone what to do, because if we're told what to do, we'll balk, we'll fight, we'll rebel. But follow what's suggested, accept that you're safe, and accept sometimes you're going to hear things you don't want to hear. But the reason you're being told them is for your greater good, for the benefit of you. It's not because it's fun to tell people things that aren't pleasant, but sometimes we need to hear the unpleasant things to better ourselves.
Yeah, we can clap now, we can celebrate. So we've talked a little bit about serving the city. And now I'm going to talk about sending out leaders. And St. George's is a resource church for the Diocese of Leeds, which means we are committed to giving away resources strategically to bless the city, including church planting. And as a whole church, we send out teams to other parts of the city to plant churches. And in 2018, we sent a team of 48 people to St. Paul's Island Wood in North Leeds. And the church was facing closure, but it's now thriving and growing with lots of children and local community involvement. And then in 2022, we sent a team of 19 people to St. Peter's Bramley in West Leeds to join with the existing congregation of about 25. And when I was planning my sermon and thinking about it, I messaged Julia, the vicar there, who we sent from here, and said, any one key thing that's exciting to tell us? And she sent me a stream of things on WhatsApp, which is wonderful. But one of the things she said was, they have now a regular congregation of 80, and each year, she says, they have a kind of sudden growth spurt of about 20 people that kind of then holds. So they're expecting another 20 people soon. People are walking through the door, searching, and have already been reading the Bible when they arrive. And last week, they had 5 new people on a start course exploring faith. And they're also using their baptistry in February for a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old who have become Christians. So that's what's happening. That's the latest news from St. Peter's Bramley. And our next church plant will be in East Leeds, led by Hannah Jones, our planting curate, which means she's a member of clergy that we're going to send out to lead a church planting team. So I'm going to invite Hannah up now. Let's welcome Hannah. So Hannah, we've heard a little bit about your journey in your talk in January, but can you tell us, can you announce to us, where is the church plant going to be?
So the church plant is going to be in Swarcliffe, in the outer east part of Leeds, in St. Luke's Church.
Wonderful, we can cheer that because we know where it's going to be. So tell us a bit more of that. Tell us the why. What are we hoping that this church plant will bring to the area?
So, yes, St. Luke's is going to be in, as I say, the community of Swarcliffe. And Swarcliffe is a community that has about 50% council houses. It has deprivation and need, but it also has lots of signs that God is preparing the ground and that people are spiritually hungry. Recently, I was doing a school run and a lady stopped me and said, "Are you a vicar?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." And she was like, "Where's the church? I want to come." And I was explained that we're going to plant a church and direct us to some other churches. but people are hungry. She's like, I'm so excited people are coming to faith. And for us as a family, we have lived in Swarcliffe for the last 7 years and have been journeying where we're going to plant in that time. And within one of the first weeks of living there, my son Chris said, look, Mum, we're on the bus. Look, Mum, there's a church you can plant to. And there started a whole journey of God revealing that St. Luke's is where the church plant was going to be. And part of that was looking on Christmas Day. I was walking with my dog and walked past the church, and the church was just so dark. It looked so dead. It really broke my heart. But God said to me, no, that is not what the future of this church is going to be. It is going to be a beacon to this community. It's going to be a light to those who are in darkness. So, yeah, it's exciting.
Wonderful. And that church and that church building where you'll start, tell us a bit about that and the space and the journey that's going to go on.
So again, Christmas Day is a really key day for the story of St. Luke's, because the sad thing is that in 2012 that church was closed as a worshipping community, and so there's been no worship in the Church of England there since that time. So there's no Church of England church in Swarcliffe that is reaching people, telling them about Jesus, being a resource for those in need. And so we really want to see the restoration of that building. As you can see, there's work to be done to make it watertight and safe. And for the garden, that's going to be an amazing resource to that church, to the community. And then after a couple of years of establishing St. Luke's in Swarcliffe, we are going to do not one but 2 church plants. We're going to plant St. Paul's, that's in Winmore. St. Paul's is a dual-purpose school and church. So it's very unique. It's a very different context and way of reaching that community, but we're really excited. And the community of Winmore doesn't have any other churches in, none at all from any other denominations. And so, again, we really want to see that community come to know Christ.
Wonderful. So, yeah, we hope that there'll be a growing, established worshiping community in St. Luke's and then in the future in the next church. And how can we at St. George's get involved? Whether we're called to stay here, whether we're called to plant as a whole church, how can we get involved?
So the first thing is to pray. We really want to cover these church plants with prayer to prepare the ground, to prepare people, to prepare the team, to be part of that journey. And everyone can be involved and pray. The second thing is that this is the official launch of the church plant. And so we're gathering a team. Yeah, it's exciting. So we're gathering a team, and it might be that you want to help us in the transition time, but it might be that God's saying, actually, come and join us. You know, we're going to be starting 2 churches from scratch. This is really exciting, and we need a really strong team who's going to be passionate about these communities, passionate about God's church and his kingdom, as Eve's been talking. So if you want to talk to me more about what it would look like to be part of the church plant, please come and talk to me afterwards. I would love to talk to you.
Wonderful. Let's give Hannah a round of applause and celebrate with her. Thank you, Hannah. So that is the launch of our next church plant to St. Luke's, Swarcliffe and the surrounding area. And as Hannah said, let's be praying. Let's start committing to pray even now. And also, if you want to find out more practically about going with her, whether for a transition time or long term in East Leeds, then do go and speak to Hannah. She would love to talk to you. So church planting is another way that we send out leaders as a whole church. And we know and we acknowledge actually from our experience of this already that it is costly as well. We miss the people that we send out. Texting Julia last week, I was like, oh yeah, haven't hung out with Julia for ages because we're now in different parts of God's kingdom. And it also has an impact on our finances as we give people who are often committed givers as well to the vision of St. George's, and we give that as a gift to the church plant as we send out together as a church. But it is hugely strategic, and it transforms places across the city when we do that. It's a highly effective way to preach Jesus, make disciples, and serve our city, and to share the gospel in new ways, in new places with new people. So do be praying for that. Of course, church planting isn't the only way that we send out leaders. Often our students, Our interns, our young adults, are with us for a few years in St. George's before work or other circumstances takes them elsewhere. And we try and invest in them while they're here, providing opportunities to grow as disciples and to serve. So if you're interested in being an intern or you know someone that is, the program and the brochure for that is live on our website. Or if you're interested in hosting an intern in your home, please chat to me or Lizzie. And you can see there the wonderful interns. On the right, that is an intentional deadpan picture, guys. That's Josh, our student pastor, and Millie. They love that photo, so we thought we'd put that in there. The students are on their weekend away at the moment, having a wonderful time, and those guys are with them as well. We also send out leaders through raising up leaders in a church context as ordinands. Now, leading in a church context isn't the only context at all, but it is one where St. George's has sent out people to be trained for ordained ministry in the Church of England. And in 2025, 4 people were ordained in the Church of England who'd been sent out by St. George's. So that's serving the city and sending out leaders, giving ourselves wholeheartedly to the kingdom of God. That kingdom of God is the rule, the reign, the realm of God's loving lordship over our lives. And it's so valuable that it's worth giving everything to. We don't have to pay our way in because Jesus has made it possible. But how can we wholeheartedly respond to God's kingdom? Whether we've discovered it, whether we've been looking diligently, how can we respond wholeheartedly in our joy to God's kingdom? And as we talk about our whole church, I want to also encourage us to respond personally. In our discipleship, as we sit here as children of God, have you responded to God's kingdom in joy? Are there parts of your life that you're holding back from pursuing God's kingdom because it feels costly or risky? We can all join in with St. George's vision in serving the city and send out leaders, but it starts with us, with our discipleship to Jesus as well. So there might be those who want to respond to that question as well this morning. As we join in with the whole church vision, there are 3 main ways to be involved. I quite like this. I think it's quite simple and straightforward. 3 ways. Pray, serve, and give. They all go together. And we're going to talk next week about our response, our wholehearted response to the vision, to join in with all the ways that the church prays and to commit our prayer life, to serve maybe in a team or in different parts of the church or different things in the city, and to give, to sow in financially to the vision of St. George's. So I encourage you to pray this week before coming next week and ask God how he invites us to respond. And there'll be some response cards that we'll fill in next week, ready for that. You might want to continue in a certain area. You might have some time of reflection this week and think, yeah, I really know my why. I know how I'm involved. But there might be lots of different ways in which God is inviting us to pray and serve and give in new ways.